So what was the reasoning behind sticking with the segmented war stories instead of having the one campaign? That was a big change from Battlefield 1, and I'm assuming there was some positive reception to it. So was the decision based mostly on positive feedback, or did you feel that your team felt more comfortable on telling the 5 more focused stories than the one overarching campaign that was seen in previous games?
So like you say, in Battlefield 1, when we first introduced the war stories concept, it was very positively received by our fans. They loved being able to see like different snippets of stories from essentially across the entire conflict. So for us it was a natural step to kind of just continue that evolution and kind of refining the war story recipe in World War II and Battlefield 5. And I think from our perspective, being able to kind of go back to World War II, where everything began for DICE with 1942, but this time around we wanted to do it in a way that you've never seen before. So essentially telling you all these untold stories that got us really excited. So covering World War II with all that kind of content in there, the war stories concept fits perfectly because we can dive into all these different human dramas and tell our players that. So for example, like the Nordlys war story that we've been hinting at here at EA Play and at Microsoft yesterday is a perfect example of that.
What points of the war are kind of serving as major inspirations for the game with the different stories? Is it like kind of like Battlefield 1 where you're kind of going to be all over the place, or is there like specific sessions, specific timelines that are going to be the main focus?
Are you referring specifically to war stories, or? Yeah, okay. So in terms of war stories, today we're only talking about Nordlys, who's the war story that's set in Norway. And I think, again, like going back to how this is a perfect fit for one of those untold stories that we really got excited about and we want to share to the rest of the world and our fan base. So being able to take our players back to Norway, in snowy Norway in 1943 under the German occupation, and tell the stories of just ordinary people fighting against the struggle of occupation. It's there's a lot more to be told and a lot more to come in the month leading up to launch.
How will the change in setting kind of affect the pace of play, if at all, from Battlefield 1, which was obviously based on the earlier war? And this is more kind of talk about multiplayer, you know, obviously different weapons, different technologies available. So how might that change the pace of play, if at all? Or maybe it's going to be kind of adjusted so it's not that different.
Well, have you played it and felt? Yeah, you haven't had a chance to play it. So first, when we went back to kind of look at what we wanted to do with Battlefield 5, and there's a couple of, again, we want to immerse you into the deepest, most immersive Battlefield to date. So we've been looking at completely overhauling the movement system. We added new features like fortifications that allow you to counter the destruction like you've never been able to do before. Towing that opens up for great gameplay opportunities. But in terms of on a soldier level, there's certain elements from World War II that we felt like this is something that we want to try to kind of work with. Mechanized warfare is one. Stretched supply lines. It's stuff like that we want to try to get into the Battlefield sandbox. And I think with attrition, towing, all the hardware, I think we're getting to a place where it's a real tight, interesting gameplay.
You kind of answered my next question a little bit, but what are some of the new features that you are kind of most excited about? You think it's going to dramatically have the most? You kind of touch different things. What do you think has had the most impact? That's going to feel very different for players who've been playing either Battlefield 1 or the last couple of installments?
So like you said, I mentioned fortifications already. That's a really interesting one to see what players will do with it, being able to essentially counter destruction for the very first time. Towing is a perfect tool to add to the sandbox of Battlefield's multiplayer, where we don't know what people will do with it, but what you can do is you can create very kind of strong points on the map that you set up yourself by just towing stationary guns and kind of fortifying them. But then you also have the tweaks and improvements we've done to the actual gunplay. We've gone away from kind of the randomness that has been a part of Battlefield before. Now it's more as you would expect it, as in it's skill. You know how you can learn how a gun behaves, and you can really master that gun. And I think that is the biggest change players will see.
Why did you decide to go in that direction?
Like I said, we want to show you World War II like you've never seen it before, and that means really grounding the soldier in the world that you're in. We started this in Battlefield 1, but we want to take it even further. We want you to be able to do what you expect the world to be doing when you do certain things. So like Battlefield 1, you could jump through windows, but you had to break the window first by meleeing it.
Yeah.
Now if a tank comes through the wall and you would just want to get out of there, just jump straight through the window, no need to break it. So it's more about the physical representation of the world, the real world, needs to be portrayed in the game.
Is there anything that you added in Battlefield 1 that you're going to carry over that you really enjoyed, or something that players enjoyed, some kind of element of it that you think was carry over to Battlefield 5 that you think is going to stay and is worth keeping?
As in, just keep it as is, or
yeah, like, you know, in terms of whether it's like game modes or, you know, things like that. Yeah.
So obviously we'll keep the classic game modes like Conquest, TDM, Domination, but with the introduction of Grand Operations, we're also kind of taking classic ones like Breakthrough that was part of Battlefield 1, but putting them into the context of Grand Operations, essentially just allowing it to be one part of a greater operations instead of being the focus game mode for operations as it was in Battlefield 1. And then of course you have, like we talked about earlier, the return of war stories, which is, the concept is the same, the stories are different, but it's been refined.
So I'm not sure, I know it's quite under wraps, but I'm curious, what was the reasoning behind adding Battle Royale to Battlefield 5? Is obviously the game genre is incredibly popular. Was this something that was purely based on demand, or was there a different reasoning behind wanting to go in that direction?
So like we said when we announced it earlier, it's Battlefield's core pillars of epic scale, destruction, vehicles and team play is a very natural fit to the Battle Royale kind of concept. So it's we have a lot of fans within the team and the studio back in Stockholm when it comes to the Battle Royale concept, so it's a natural step for us to add it to the ever-growing multiplayer sandbox that we have.
At what point in the game's development did you decide for sure you're going to go ahead and go that route? Was it something that kind of emerged through the popularity? Was it something that was early on or later on? At what point did it really become for sure we're doing this?
So, like I said, we've always been fans of that genre, and it's a very natural fit to the Battlefield sandbox.
And just in terms of general direction, are you looking to kind of play it safe and keep it familiar and then kind of perfect it with the Battlefield 5 spin, or are you looking to do something very different or very unique?
So again, like I said, we have core pillars in Battlefield that we feel really bring something to the table, and we want to do it the Battlefield way.